days in a row. Fridays, they only have classes at night. They don't have any morning classes. So
Okay.
I did the rebounder slash trampoline this morning because I was like, it's Friday. I'm not feeling like moving. Did you run?
I went to the CrossFit.
Oh, nice.
It was all legs. My legs are gonna be very in a lot of pain tomorrow.
Okay, it'll all be worth it. All right. Find this on Substack.
All right, I hit the custom live streaming. I guess I
Yeah,
can't.
we
I
are
can never.
live.
We are live.
We are live.
Okay. Hi,
And we've got
Melissa.
people joining us, which is awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colin Mustful, and this is our office hours at every second and fourth Friday. Today's the second Friday of January, so here we are at 12 p.m. Central.
I'm excited to be here for another office hours. And if anyone has any questions as we're talking, please feel free to drop them in the chat as we're going, and we will definitely catch them this time around.
Yeah, so we do have a chat thread. If you ever want to post a question ahead of the office hours, we will see those and then we'll answer those questions during our discussion. Otherwise, you're welcome to post during the live, and Melissa's going to be monitoring the chat so we can discuss those. Um, but otherwise, Melissa and I are just going to talk industry stuff, publishing, writing, book marketing. Where do we start today, Melissa?
There's always something to talk about. I think we had a few questions come in, so why don't we start with those and kind of jump right into, I think we had a question from Stephen, you said, and segues a bit into what Georgiana was asking, and we'll kind of jump into that first.
Okay. Yeah, well, Steve and I can just kind of summarize. So he was interested in the self-publishing process because I'm hosting a workshop on the 16th next Friday about self-publishing, independent publishing, like how to do it and succeed. And he had a lot of questions because there's so much to learn. And I know because I was very naive when I started and I had no idea how complicated it was. I thought you wrote a book and you put it out in the world and then you became rich and famous. And that's not
Right?
how it works. So,
Shocking.
I mean, just we're going to go over a ton of stuff in the
Yeah.
workshop. It's going to be an hour and a half, give or take, because who knows how much stuff we're really going to get into. But you really need to build a solid foundation, and we're going to be
Mhm.
going over what that foundation is and just being prepared to not just work hard at drafting your book, having an idea, putting it down on paper, sitting down every day and doing that work, and then working with an editor and finalizing your story. But you have to kind of reach out and show up, and especially when it comes to independent publishing, because you don't have that extra layer of an agent or a publisher saying yes. And that's what booksellers or media, they're going to look at that, and they don't have the time to vet every single person that publishes a novel. They might just look at your cover, they might just look at the title, they might just look at your website, take 5 seconds. In fact, I do it all the time because I have so many authors reaching out to me. I don't have time to really go through and read every book and look at the first chapter and things like that. So you have to show up first and build that foundation of this is who I am, this is what I'm writing, this is why I'm writing. And if you're interested in that, then follow along, right, Melissa?
Absolutely. I think it's crucial to kind of, even before you start that pathway too, as you're working through your book, like know what direction you think you might be heading to, which can affect how you're building your community. So if you're like, I have clients that are with Lake Union through Amazon Publishing, and they're going to have a lot of marketing behind the scenes that is done for them. And then I have clients that are self-published, and we have to be very intentional about the time and the efforts and what we're doing because they are the marketing team with me, helping, guiding them, doing the work as a team together to put that out there. So I think it's great with the workshop of just starting back at the basics of like, as Stevens like early in getting his book together, start, you might not have the answers to those questions, but thinking them through as to how you're building in those early stages. Where do you want to take this? How are you going to show up? All the questions that surround uh, self-publishing and all that goes with it.
And I think it's important as well to not just set your own roadmap, like where do you want to go, but realistic expectations in within what your genre is, what your audience size might be. This is also
Hmm.
something I didn't understand. My writing centers on the U.S. Dakota War of 1862, which is a relatively unknown subject, especially nationally. It's fairly well known locally, but there just isn't a large audience for it. So no matter how good my writing is going to be, it's not seen as marketable to a publisher. So that's something you have to think about before you sit down and write is how marketable do you want this topic to be? If you want to be a bestseller, you might not be able to write what you're passionate about. You may have to write what the readers want, what the market wants. And so you kind of
Yeah.
have to balance what you're interested in and you're capable of with the expectations of what you're actually writing, what you're publishing.
And I think those are a lot of questions that people kind of come to later on after they've been publishing and then realize what they're up against or why can't I sell, 1 million copies of my book. Not thinking through the audience or how you're going to be pitching to your audience as well, um, is based off of kind of who your readers are going to be and what are they interested in. Like yours, obviously they're interested in very specific kind of local history. You're going to be pitching different than somebody that has a very broad topic for historical fiction, that people are grabbing off the shelves at any bookstore that they're passing by. And answering all those questions, it can seem difficult, I think, on the front end, but it makes everything fall into place smoother as you're going because you have your expectations set, right? Like you know that you're who your audience is going to be, what's kind of you've learned like what's a realistic number of books for you to sell over time, rather than not having this expectation set and then feeling like you're failing every step of the way because you're comparing yourself to somebody else that's, writing romance to market and selling a ton of books and you're like, why can't I do that? Well, it's not a even comparison.
Yeah, it's important to have a roadmap while also an understanding that you're going to learn as you go. You're not going to know everything up front, and that's kind of what this workshop is designed for that I'm doing next week is I'm going to lay it all out for you. In fact, I put together a checklist so that you can see every step of the process, but you still have to understand that you have to take it one step at a time, learning during each stage of the publishing process. And over time, it all adds up. And that's kind of why I'm sitting here today because I started with nothing and it took me 15 years of trial and error, learning, and continuing to move forward. And that's another thing, yeah, self-publishing you have to think about is what is my timeline? What's realistic for me as far as what I want to accomplish within that time? All things to consider.
Yeah, and I think it's great to be honest with yourself. Like, are you someone that has a full-time job and you have only, so many hours in the week to be writing, so that's going to take you longer than somebody else? Are you wanting to turn it into a full-time career and you're building the foundations to turn that into something down the road? Then you're, probably going to have to write to market. Like there's a lot of questions that come into play based around that. And I think it's also great to remember that like when you map this out, it doesn't have to stay the same. Like you can change at any point in time and adjust to what's working for you then. Um, I did have a question that I wanted to kind of segue into a little bit that goes along with this topic from Georgina about when is the right time to start um, marketing your books, like figuring out what you're doing. And I think there is no too early a point in time to start figuring out like what are your answers to some of these questions. So I think the workshop is going to be great for people that maybe have even an inkling of an idea for the book, and people that have been writing and maybe haven't taken time to create the structures around where they're heading with it, because it is such a like nobody follows the same path every time. I have, people that have written 3 or 4 books, somebody that's writing their first book, and everybody's doing different pieces of the puzzle at different times. See if you can like start early on with the foundations and grow from there. Um, and I find it's kind of like the same for the marketing side of stuff of there's no like right time to start marketing because you can start building your kind of credibility around the topic that you're writing about in so many different ways. And especially Substack, I feel like has made it really accessible to maybe you're reviewing books that are in the genre that you are going to be writing about. And you're kind of like letting people know that you're familiar with it and you're interested in it. Maybe it's history and you're doing research as you're looking for topics of what you might write about and you're sharing that on your Substack. So then I have people that have like 5 books in and they're like, I haven't done any marketing or built a newsletter yet. Like, help, what do I do? And then we find a way to start things and start building from where they're at. So being mindful of the process, like you said, your checklist, is like half the battle of just being aware of what you need to build and then figure out where you're at and then start.
Yeah, and I didn't understand the newsletter process when I first put up my author website in 2014. I didn't have a newsletter. Through WordPress, you could subscribe to the blog, but I didn't really understand that. And it is a lot harder to try to start that newsletter after the fact, after the books have come out, and you just don't know what kind of content you want to give. So I think that's a really important point that if newsletters are paramount because you have direct access to your audience and you can interact with them and share your journey. And so that's, I think, if you wanted to actually pinpoint a starting point, that's what you should start with is that newsletter. But then going off more of what you said, no one really knows where this will take them. When you start the novel, you don't know where it will end up, and that's what you're experimenting. Everything is just experimenting, and I do the same thing with history through fiction. If you look at the iterations of this company from 2019 to today, we try new things. Some don't work. Some things do work, but I have to just alter them a little bit. And it's all just a matter of experimenting on different things, figuring out what works for you, what works for your audience, what you enjoy doing. And I think that's a part of starting early is just try things, try different platforms, try different methods of maybe you're not good, maybe you don't feel comfortable on video, but you can do the voiceover for TikTok or something like that. You'll kind of discover those things as you go. And then once you discover what works for you and what your audience what resonates with your audience, then by the time you hit that point where you're 4 to 5 months from launch date, you have a solid marketing platform to dive into.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's important to not make your content all about just your book itself, because it's like so many people like talk about nothing but the book, and then like so somebody buys your book, then your content is of no interest to them until the next book comes out, a year later or however quickly you're publishing. So if you build the foundations around kind of the topics and things that are relevant to you and how you want to build your community, it will make it more sustainable. And then when the changes happen, people are still with you. Like thinking about your TikTok content, and you did the videos about the pizza delivery there for a bit. And it was really fascinating to see the behind the scenes, but now you're not a pizza shop anymore. And so your content is shifting, but people have gotten to know you, your personality. They're interested in the shift that's happened. Like they are invested. They want to see what's the next thing for history through fiction and you at your new job, running it full time. So your content can handle those shifts without everyone leaving now, because of the you behind the content, not just this book that you have, this book that you have. Oh, I bought the book and then why should I continue following you? Because all you're doing is talking about the same book that I've already read.
Is there anything that you would keep out from the public eye? Like obviously you want to share as much, like you just said, I was sharing my pizza delivery shifts and how much money I made on each delivery. Where do you draw the line there?
I think it's personal for everyone to make that decision because we do see people putting like their opinions about everything out there, and then some people are much more guarded with how much of an activist they want to be with their channels or what they're sharing from their personal life. I would caution people to sometimes I see people have an idea for a book and they get really excited about it and they want to start like pitching it right away. And I would say for like this specific book side of things for marketing, like use the themes, but you don't need to tell people like I'm writing a book and this is the blurb and it's not going to be out for another year and a half. So like hold some of those things back and be building the excitement. There's a creator and I cannot think of her name right now, but she shares content. She works in a museum in New York and she's been writing a romance book for about the last year now, and I follow her and I love her content, and she shares her outfits of going to work. She shares work events for being in the museum and then talks generally about she's writing no romance that's set in a museum. So it's these general themes that are of interest to me, and I'm excited for when her book eventually comes out, but it's not, she hasn't boxed herself into something so specific that if her book has shifted over time, um, she's editing things like that, that her audience isn't going to be disappointed because it's not what you promised us. Like if it's a romance is set in a museum, I'm excited for it. And that's all I kind of need to know at this point.
It's fascinating to find creators who or see creators that find their stride. And it can be
Hmm.
the weirdest thing
Yeah.
of just some niche of how they deliver their content, and then it works, and then they just stick with it, and people love it, and it's just fascinating.
I think we're really kind of shifting in social media of like people want to get back to feeling like they're getting to know the person behind the content in a like anti-AI kind of way because we have so much AI content. Like I want to feel like I'm connecting to another human. But also we need to be very strategic about what we're presenting to people and how we're doing it, and that it is kind of following that funnel of them leading to either however we want them to interact with the content, whether you're an influencer or you're selling your book, like whatever the call to action is, it needs to fit that. But I think we're definitely in, I think even on Substack, I'm seeing it with newsletters of you do it with yours, I do it with mine. Like people want to connect with us on a bit of a personal level, rather than just hearing about history through fiction and what it has going on, just what the literary assistant is doing for clients. Like they want to get to know us through the content. So if you can capture that as you're building your community, I think you'll see growth quicker as
Um, and in those same lines, and I know we had a comment on this earlier, was balance, because what you're describing is a lot of work, and what people see me do is a lot of work. Um, how do you balance the work of writing, the work of content creating, with the life of being a parent, being a son or daughter for aging parents, of having a job? Uh, how do you do all those things without getting worn out?
can be difficult, and there's definitely different seasons of life that I find it's easier sometimes, sometimes it's really difficult. I think you have to be brutally honest with yourself of what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish, what's the timeline as we talked about, and then how much space in my life can I commit to that in order to make it happen. Don't tell yourself like I'm gonna write a book in 3 months and then edit it's gonna be another 3 months and like in 6 months I'm gonna be marketing this new book. Like be honest, and I think also working with somebody that kind of knows the timeline. So like, you could have a call with someone and be honest with them as to what is the process. Because I think sometimes, people want to write a book and don't even understand the timeline of what it's going to take for it to, if you're doing book coaching and then editing and getting through this whole process. So first start with like honesty around your writing and then figure out what your priorities are. So, um, I kind of always tell people if you don't have a book, you don't really have anything to sell yet. So like going all in and spending 15 hours on your social media and then not working on the book that you want to write is not going to really accomplish your goal of being an author. So it's always like kind of adjusting over what phase you're in, but spend the time you need to on the things that you have to. And then also, like, I'm wife, mom, working. I have my clients. I also have my things that I want to be accomplishing. So I put them in my calendar and I have my clients do this as to like schedule your writing time, schedule your social media time. That way it doesn't just get pushed to the back burner and then the end of the week comes and you realize you didn't do anything. So if you can put it in there, it's never a perfect week, but make sure it's important, schedule the time to make it happen. And then I feel like it slowly gets you to where you want to be because you are making the space for it. Let your family know. I feel like that's an important piece too. Like the people around you more than likely probably want to help support you. So if you make them like a part of it and say like, I need 1 hour uninterrupted time, on the weekend in the mornings so that I can write. And more than likely they'll be like, absolutely make that happen for you. And then also to just recognize what sort of support system you have. So you might be one person that's trying to write a book and show up on social media and write your newsletter, and something has to give. So you have to figure out how those pieces are going to work together. My clients have me doing social media creation for them. So they can focus on the writing and they're going to, obviously have more space for writing the books. And I'm going to be supporting them in another way. If you're, with a publisher, they're going to be helping on the marketing side. So just acknowledge, like, if you're one person, you can only get so much done. If you have a team, that's great. You have your, even with me, people have their budget for what they can spend for marketing support. What can we accomplish in that amount of time that's going to give them the most effective use of me working on their team for them? Um, for you, like if people are doing edits, like do the work you're supposed to do so that when they show up to talk to you, they're not like, oh, I was too busy with work, I didn't get it done. Like use the time you have to the best that you are able and make progress.
I may have overdone it myself. Now that I'm 9 days into no pizza job, I planned for this, but it's like, I can't keep up with it all.
I think it's like all about self-reflection as you're going because I do the same thing. It's like I'm going to commit to 10 projects and that sounds amazing, and then I want to do these 5 reading groups on the side, and like you can't do it all. But I find you know the more I've been doing this, the more brutal I get with like, okay, what are the few things that are going to actually help me accomplish what I want to do? And also I find helping like planning quarterly can be really great as well. So like how many chapters do you want to try to write in this? Do you have a goal for how many social media posts do you want to make in the week? How many newsletters do you want to write? If you have those like mini goals that you are striving towards, if you don't hit the mark every time, hey, you made it like 80% of the way, and that's a huge accomplishment rather than, I think it was last office hours we talked about like not showing up at all. And then that didn't serve you. So do what you can and
Mhm.
start leaving things that aren't moving you forward.
I met with a book coaching client this morning, and we actually did talk about these things because I won't say her name. She submitted the writing just 2 days before our meeting was scheduled, and I was honest with her and I said this it looks kind of chaotic, and that's because she was trying to get too much done,
Yeah.
and so I suggested as soon as we're done here, schedule your next meeting with me so then you have a deadline, you know when you have to have the next pages in.
Mhm.
And I also suggested, like you were talking about building it into your calendar, well, build it in consistently. Let's say it's every morning at 7 a.m. whether it's 15 minutes or 2 hours, that's when you're working on your book and that you
Yeah.
don't work on anything else. And um, she's also thinking ahead to when she's going to get the first draft done. And as you mentioned, like sometimes it's helpful to have someone who knows how long it takes because she wants to get it done by the summer, but she keeps going back and revising pages and she's not gonna have a first draft if she does that. So I said, you got
Yeah.
to move forward. Even though I gave her a bunch of suggestions, I said, just remember those as you keep writing, but don't go back and revise.
Absolutely. And I think it's like, at least for me, if I can schedule things at the same time, like every morning at 7 a.m., I do this across the board. And even if it's only maybe like 15-minute increments that you have, like your brain starts to recognize, like, okay, this is the time that I need to do this. And you can be so much more efficient rather than kind of spazzing out and trying to find bits of time whenever in between. So we have some questions here too that I want to make sure. Time is flying by today.
Yeah, I
Um,
see that from Nancy.
yes. So Nancy says you talk a lot about Substack. I'm hesitant to dive in deeper there. Personally, I'm flooded with Substack posts from people I follow, and I'm starting to give up on reading them all. What's your advice about the potential for Substack to be too crowded? Do you want you have any thoughts on that, or do you want me to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can start, and I'm sure you have plenty to say on it. I mean, my suggestion is I don't know about you, but I feel obligated because I want to support everybody, and I can't. Um, so you have to just be honest and go with what's giving you the most value and what's most interesting to you. And that will change depending on where you're at in the process and where the creators are at and what they're putting out there. And so you have to kind of limit yourself to the creators that you can relate to most and get the most value out of, and that you actually want to sit down and read. If you find that it's becoming an obligation, then I would say don't worry about it. Don't worry that you can't support everyone. They're going to find their target audience. They're going to find the people that are most resonate with their content, and you just have to stick with the two, three, four that are giving you the most value and are helping you with your journey as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I'll talk to kind of the creator side of things a little bit. For starters, Substack being um, crowded, I think it's like any other app that we see out there. So, Facebook became overwhelming. People went to Instagram. We had Instagram, it was new and amazing. And then everyone started to go to Instagram. We had TikTok. And so it's the same with all of the apps. Eventually, it becomes popular, mainstream, more and more people are on it. And obviously, we see now it's not just writer focused. We have a lot of celebrities coming in and starting their own Substack. So it can be a good and bad. I think it's the same as any other space. If you know who you're talking to, who your audience is, how you're trying to connect with them, and showing up consistently, then the growth might be slower now than it was when Substack was new. And you and I were having a conversation about this the other day. Like, how do you grow as quickly? Well, there's the people that came in early, and everyone's clicking subscribe, and it's like 500 new subscribers in one day. This is amazing. And now that it's been around for a while, people are a little bit more choosy about who they're following because they do feel that exhaustion. But if you give them a reason as to why they want to subscribe to you, what they're going to get when they do subscribe, and then make sure that the content is good enough that they want to keep coming back. And then I think also that's where that layer of making it personal so that they feel the connection. Like if you don't show up in their inbox, they're looking for it as to like, oh, I haven't heard what Colin's up to this week and who he's been meeting with. I need to go see if he posted something. That's the sort of community that you want to be building with people. And it might be a little slower in order to do that, but those are the people that are going to buy when you release a book. Those are the people that are going to continue to show up and support your community. So I guess in short, I think every platform is going to become overcrowded at some point in time. It's just the way things are. But if you like the platform, you enjoy showing up and creating content for it, and then just stick with what works for you and what's building your community slowly but intentionally, then it could be a great place.
Yeah, and um, sometimes and we talk about this too, that I don't want to overwhelm my audience, and every time you send something out, you will lose some subscribers because you're giving out too much content, but you're also building a more focused, targeted audience of people that are going to stick with you and are going to buy your book and talk about your book and do all those things that have much more value than someone who just sees that you posted something but then moves on and doesn't like it or interact with it.
It's one of the hardest things, and I'm always kind of like talking myself off the ledge about this because we live in such a numbers engagement driven society now. And so I have to, if you do get those like couple of unsubscribes when you send something out, I try to tell myself like I'm happy that those people are making the space that they need to so that they can maybe go on to create other things and not feel overwhelmed rather than taking it personal. And even if they stayed, they probably weren't going to be continuing to open the emails that I'm sending anyway. So it was really just a vanity metrics that they were there. So just be okay with, like the couple people at a time subscribing and then they keep interacting with you and engaging in your content rather than hoping to grow by thousands every few months, but then the people are just, maybe occasionally opening the email, they're not commenting, they're not curious about what you have going on. It's not serving you with the goals that you're trying to accomplish, but it's really hard to not look at the numbers and compare ourselves these
Yeah.
days.
Well, before we wrap things up here, can we just do a couple pitches of what we have coming up?
Absolutely. You got all the pitches, so I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, next Friday, January 16th, I'm hosting a workshop called Publishing Pathways, How to Self-Publish the Right Way. I'll kind of go over all the mistakes that I made in self-publishing and help you to avoid those, and then everything I've learned as a publisher so that you know what direction to go, what platforms to use, what expectations to have, those sorts of things. You can register on Eventbrite for an individual session, or if you're a paid subscriber, you get access to that workshop and each workshop that we're going to do each month. Then we have our next office hours 2 weeks from now. And then you and I are also going to be hosting Substack for Authors workshop. That's going to be on February 10th. You can find that on the History Through Fiction Eventbrite if you go on Eventbrite and search History Through Fiction. But we'll send out more information about that between now and then. And then I want to take a little time to invite people to my conference. So we're sitting here talking so much about all these lessons for writers, for authors, and trying to give all this advice. But one thing that is invaluable is actually being in a room with other writers and learning from their experience. You have so much experience, I have so much experience, but we don't have the same as a Madeline Martin who's going to be at the conference, or an Addison Armstrong, or the agents that are going to be there, like Jessica Berg. So first of all, let me say we have a limited number of in-person participants. I only have 2 registrations left for the in-person. But if you can attend in person, I would love to invite you to attend virtually. You'll get access to all of our sessions. We're doing 7 sessions on a prologue day. These are all like workshops from people that are going to be talking about craft, people that are going to be talking about marketing, people that are going to be talking about lessons that they've learned through the publishing process. And obviously you don't have to attend them all, but you get access to all those. Plus you get access to each one of the sessions that we're doing on Saturday and Sunday of March 28th and 29th. You'll get access to those recordings. And I really want to point out that there is a community. Like, as I've been building this conference, I want to make it so that people can connect and then work with each other beyond the conference. So we have a directory where you can see everyone who's going to be attending. We have a Facebook page where you can interact with other attendees, and this is all leading up to the conference. And then certainly in the Zoom sessions, if you are attending virtually, you can interact with people there and hopefully build some connections. Find somebody who's writing about a similar topic, or maybe somebody who's in a similar place as you, because maybe you're intimidated by me or you're intimidated by Sarah Penner, who's going to be there, but you might not be intimidated by somebody else who's a working mother who is just passionate about something in history and is trying to write their first manuscript.
Yeah, I think there's something too about the like collective energy and creativity and just talking to other people and seeing like other people that have been on the journey for a while and getting to hear their story. And I find it so motivating to be in a room with other people, even if they might not be writing the exact same thing that you are, or you're still trying to decide if you're going to write. Like it's the perfect place to come and like get those foundations as well as like next level information as well from like the people that have been there and done that already and are like on their way continuing to the top because they already reached it and they're just continuing to write along as they keep continuing to publish their
Yeah,
book. So I'm excited. I'll be there virtually. Can't wait.
awesome. Yeah, so that's going to be March 28th and 29th. That prologue day is March 18th. And at History Through Fiction, we're all working really hard to make it a great conference. So if you're on the fence about it, go ahead, dive in and do it. You're going to get a ton of value and build a community of writers that you can use throughout the year.
See, we have a few shout outs. Barbara's going to be there virtually. Sarah says she's excited to be there. And you are welcome, Nancy, for the information there for Substack.
Oh, and I see Barbara's checking in. Barbara, you should email me. Let me know where you're at. She's working on a revision, so she's one of our authors.
Awesome. This flew by today for office hours. I'm excited to have people leaving us questions. I think that and a reminder to leave them in the chat if anybody has anything for us over at History Through Fiction each week, and we'll be getting to them as they come in and then able to share them for other people to catch as we are live as well.
Yeah, I'll post a new chat thread as soon as we're done here. I'll post this as a recording. And anytime in the next 2 weeks, if you think of anything that you want to know, reach out to either one of us comment on one of our posts or anything at all, and we're happy to talk about it.
Absolutely. 2 more weeks, we'll be back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Melissa. Thanks, everyone, for
Yeah, thanks,
watching.
Colin.
We'll see you
We'll
next
see
time.
you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.